My ex's father is my one-night stand. An original billionaire romance audiobook by the Flower Author, Part 1. Where is your fiancé? The red-haired girl asked, with a smirk on her face as she unbuckled her heels, sitting on the bed. Roseline had never met her before, so it couldn't be one of Thompson's friends. She peered more into the room from the creak they had left from not bolting the door properly to take a proper look at the woman. The red hair was not familiar at all. What was she doing now? Roseline watched as she flung her heels away from her feet carelessly across the room. She raised her legs, placing them on top of the bed and away, with her nails pointed upwards. Then, propping herself up with her elbow, she threw her head back and flexed her neck, a slow moan escaping her throat. Roseline listened, her eyes still glued to the scene that unfolded before her. How many times would I tell you that she isn't my fiancé? Thompson replied from somewhere outside of her view, his voice a mix of tiredness and longing. Rosaline's breath hitched and her shoulders dropped. She remembered that evening, the evening before the day she moved in with Thompson. He had driven her to a fine restaurant. Then, pulling a ring out of his breast pocket, he had asked her to marry him. Now here he was, denying that he ever gave her a ring in front of another woman right inside their bedroom. Rosaline's eyes itched with tears. What then is she? You allow her live with you in your house. The red hair spoke. She didn't sound angry. She sounded confident, playful, like they were mocking her for being so foolish to have believed Thompson and the ring. Nothing, came Thompson's reply. She watched the red hair break into a hysterical laugh even before Thompson's reply dropped. She laughed so hard, kicking her legs in the air excitedly, her red panties slipping away from the cover her lavender-colored dress provided into the open. You bet. Thompson spoke again, stifling a laugh. Oh, come here, Daddy. The red hair cut him off, springing up from where she lay on the bed to a kneeling position. Rosaline's lips trembled uncontrollably as she watched her smoothly sling a dress off her shoulders, then completely letting go of it through her legs. She was undeniably thick, her skin a bit tanned, but full, smooth and curvy. Her backside was just as plump and protruding as her front end. Don't keep me waiting, she said slowly in a raspy voice, her breathing a bit loud, the cascade of bright long hair swinging behind her like a dangerous flame. Rosaline's stomach turned and her face clenched tightly around the handle of the big travel box beside her. She heard the clanging sound of the metallic head of Thompson's belt meeting the ground. Next, quiet footsteps. Then, Thompson appeared in her view like a ghost she didn't believe existed. He was completely bare, with his hairy chest rising and falling slowly, his cock shooting out in front like a gun ready to be fired, his balls bloated from desire, swinging from side to side as he walked closer to the bed. Rosaline's feet stuck to the ground and her eyes refused to blink as they looked on. That's it, my boy. I like what I see. The red hair gasped, rolling her eyes longingly at Thompson. As Thompson climbed onto the bed, his eyes totally locked in hers. She drew her breast closer to him, then proceeded to rub the big pumpkins against the flushed skin of his face. You like them? She asked, moaning lightly. Thompson paused. Then, in a defiant move of uncontrollable desire, dug his chin into her breasts, burying his entire face in them. Ouch! She gasped, then broke into a weak laugh, pushing his head more into her chest. The damn bra! She spoke again, twisting uncomfortably as she threw her hands behind her to unhook the material, but Thompson caught her hands. Without words, his head still hidden in her cleavage, he slowly returned her hands to his head. Obliging to his silent command, she cackled loudly, pressing her chest even more into his face, and then, with her tongue, glided across his neck and ears hungrily. Roseline froze. She wanted to scream, but in that moment, she forgot how to. Her breathing became hot and too fast. The stress pressed down on her throat. She wanted to run, but her body was stiff, like it grew out of where she stood and needed to be uprooted to be moved. She looked on. Thompson lifted his head, but not in the direction where she stood. He was too engrossed in eating the meal before him. He didn't notice they were being watched. Instead, he caught the mouth of the red herd in his and ravaged them like a starved beast. With his hand, he teased her nipples until they popped out through her lacy bra. Grabbing the plump skin, he massaged them with both of his hands, his lips still holding hers in an earthquake. The red hair twisted, stretching her body uncomfortably. She withdrew her lips from his, but before she could say what she wanted to say, Thompson caught her tongue, sucking it hard and mercilessly. Giving him a few quick taps on the back, she made to withdraw again. But then, he caught the lace of her bra and in one strong pull, snapped the material in two, causing her pumped breast to break free, hard against his chest. She breathed out in relief. Immersing her mouth more in his and wrapping her arms around his neck tightly, she pulled him into the bed, closing his waist in her legs. "Service, now," she commanded, her voice weak amidst silent moans. Roseline watched Thompson glide away from her face to her stomach. He pulled the red panties off her skin and went down on her immediately with his tongue. Cries of moaning filled the room. "Yeah, keep it going. I'll suck up your chest," the redhead cried excitedly as Thompson grinded hungrily into her. For a second, the veil blurred into Roseline's stare, and then hot tears streamed down her cheeks. Her head slumped, and more tears dropped onto the floor, forming a tiny pool. Her fist tightened, causing her long umber nails to dig painfully into her palm. Then, one last look at the woman, sprawled legs wide open on the bed, with her hair in a red mess against the white sheets, and the man on top of her, thrusting in and out with all of his might. Roseline turned and walked out of the apartment, her luggage rolling slowly against the hard floor right after her. "I'm sorry, I've got no tissue." The driver beckoned to Roseline as she got off the taxi, her face soaked in tears that had refused to stop flowing. Dragging her suitcase weakly after her, she walked to the reception and, without words, handed the confused staff her credit card. "What should I charge you for, ma'am?" the staff member asked, looking at her intently while holding out the card before her face. Silence. Tears. Roseline broke down, muffling the sound of her own sobs by putting her hands over her mouth. She continued to cry profusely. The staff member had good judgment, because as soon as she noticed the suitcase Roseline was carrying, she proceeded to book her a room. Hungry from not having eaten through her long flight journey that morning, weak from crying, broken from witnessing the man she had loved for years riding another woman raw right on the bed they shared, Roseline curled up on the cold floor, her legs stretched before her. Sadness ate away at her heart and her eyes burned from sobbing non-stop for hours. Her phone began to ring endlessly. Digging it out from her handbag, she glanced across the screen, prepared to reject the call if it was from Thompson. She unclenched her fist after she found out it was Anna calling. Tears formed in her eyes, and before she could blink them back, they began to fall, piercing the skin of her face, a painful reminder of what she had witnessed earlier. With her fingers unsteady, she tapped on the screen of her phone to answer the call. "Rosie, how are you doing? Honestly, I've been trying to reach you since forever. Where did you dump your phone?" came Anna's concerned voice. Swallowing the hard lump that had formed in her throat, she slowly brought the phone down from her ears to her eyes. It was then she saw that Anna had actually called her 9 times before. Sighing heavily, she returned the phone to her ears. "I'm sorry, Anna. I didn't hear my phone ring," Roseline replied with her voice shaky and her breathing heavy. "I guess so. Are you home? You don't sound so fine. Flight sickness?" Anna peered further. "No, Anna. I'm fine. I got a bad cold from the overnight flight. You don't have to worry, she replied, ashamed of telling Anna about Thompson's betrayal. Roseline had traveled to Cameroon to see her closest friend, Anna, to catch up with her for the summer holidays. While at 8, she bragged about how she would be getting married soon to an amazing man who loves her and would never do anything to hurt her feelings. She had just returned from this trip, and what? She had to tell her that she had caught that amazing would-be husband of hers in bed with another woman? Her head spiraled with thoughts as she pondered on what to do next. You've never gotten a cold from taking flights. Anna shrugged from the other end of the line. You should take some medicine. You sound really awful. Of course, Roseline replied, nodding her head continuously. How is Thompson, by the way? The name sent Rosaline's head spiraling and her face stiff from anger and hatred. The heavy pain of betrayal weighed heavily on her mind. Lifting her left hand off the floor weakly, she began to rub her chest in a fruitless effort to calm the storm that brewed and ate. Then, letting out a weak heavy breath into the receiver, she decided to tell Anna what had happened. But as soon as she opened her mouth to start talking, Anna cut her off. You did not forget the sign, she whispered. What was she talking about? I thought you did. Considering how you've never used it until now, you must be having a bad welcoming party right now. She giggled over the phone. Anna, wait, listen, Roseline replied, alarmed at how she had misinterpreted her sigh of frustration for a sign they had jokingly agreed in the past 2 years when they were busy in a room with a man and didn't want to be distracted by phone calls. Roseline found it ridiculous back then, and she still does. She didn't see any need for it since she would rather not answer the phone than pick up just to be dramatic like that. She tried to explain, but Anna hung up before she even got the chance to. She sighed, tossing the phone to the bed and burying her face in her arms. She shut her eyes tightly, cursing at how pathetic she had become. Her body trembling from tiredness, her eyes drifted to sleep before she knew it. A few minutes later, the images of Thompson and the red hair in bed flashed across her mind, causing her to jerk upright in shock. Her neck ached so badly from the pain of having it in an uncomfortable position for too long. She wasn't dreaming. It happened. She saw it all happen, right before her very eyes. Without thinking, she sprang up to her feet, opening the door. She walked out of the room, leaving the door ajar behind her. On reaching the reception, the loud music coming from a distance hit her ears. Is there an event? She turned to a staff member walking past with a stack of glasses in a tray balanced on his palms. There's a party in the lobby. There's a free entry for everyone checked into the hotel before 9 p.m. The young man smiled before hurriedly walking away towards the lobby. Roseline continued to walk slowly but towards the lobby, following the staff. The sound intensified as she got closer and closer to the place. Finally, she was inside the party house. Dim colored lights, loud music, a crowd of white dancers, and lots of alcohol. Moving through the crowd, careful not to crash into anyone, she found her way to the bar stand. Then, settling into one of the tall bar stools, she stared at the crowd as they went wide to the DJ's mix. I know exactly what's good for you, the bartender suddenly spoke, breaking into her thoughts and diverting her focus to the table where he had laid a glass of tequila before her. Not sure of what she wanted and how the bartender would know that, she grabbed the glass off the table and, in one gulp, downed its contents. Yes, that's how we do it, the bartender cheered. A few hours later, not sure what else happened at the party house or how she got to where she was now, her eyes heavy and her legs weak, Roseline banged continuously on the door in front of her. At first, there was no answer. She turned the knob over and over again, but the door wouldn't unlock. As she raised both of her hands to continue banging on the door, her whip completely ready to be transferred onto the polished brown wood, the door swung open, and she landed on the broad shoulders of the man who had opened the door. There were free drinks. Can you imagine that? Roseline bickered, her cheeks flushed from the effects of the alcohol as she pushed her way into the room. Mr. Thomas White, the CEO and largest shareholder of the Zone Group of companies, the biggest franchise in London, just stood by the door, his eyes heavy with sleep. He had had a meeting with an important client that evening, but just as he was about leaving the premises, he collided with an old friend and decided to converse over drinks. By the time they were done, it was quite late. He had called the secretary to check his schedule for the next day and checked in the hotel after he had confirmed nothing needed his physical presence at the office until the next week. He had taken an early bath and retired to bed earlier than usual. He was already deep in his sleep until the heavy banging on the door woke him. He had hesitated for a second, knowing fully well the hotel would have called the landline if there was any information to pass. But strangely enough, the knocking was persistent and bore a sense of urgency. He had, out of curiosity, clicked open the door to see a young woman that reeked heavily of alcohol dive onto him. Still trying to figure out how to handle the situation, Roseline had sluggishly laid herself in the room like she had every right to, muttering gibberish about free drinks and a good time. Alarmed at the young woman that had just barged into his hotel room at the time of the night, he swallowed hard to soothe his parching throat. "I need some water first," Thomas sighed, closing the door. Then, he began walking straight to where the mini fridge stood, his sight still blurry from the unfinished sleep, plus the fact that his glasses were still on the bedside drawer. But just as he reached for the fridge, he heard a loud crash against the hard floor and a shrill cry that followed it. Thompson froze in shock, his hand hanging midway. What was that? His eyes widened as he turned towards the direction of the noise to see what had caused it. There, Roseline stood, her back to the television high above the wall behind. The glass vase, initially on the small round table in front of her, now shattered into bits on the floor. "Are you okay?" Thomas rushed to where she stood, blood dripping from the middle finger of her left hand into the shards of clear glass. "Oh my God!" Thomas breathed out, grabbing her hand and staring closely at the pin-length deep cut at the side of the affected finger. As he looked intently, his mind trying to figure out how to get her first aid at midnight, a drop of tear settled into the back of his palm. Looking up at the face of the uninvited stranger, his hands trembled. Was she in that much pain? Roseline was crying profusely. Her red and puffy eyes, coupled with the paleness of her face, showed just how much sadness her heart was suffering. "Okay, give me a second," Thomas said, his tone soaked in concern as he moved swiftly to grab his phone. Scrolling hurriedly until he got to the contact he was looking for, his finger clicked on the dial button even before his mind followed the process. No response. He breathed out heavily, then dialed again and again. But for every dial, it rang repeatedly and ended without an answer. "You love me, right?" Roseline spoke, her sentence muffled by the sobbing. Thomas's heart skipped upon hearing her question. Slowly, he turned to see her standing right behind him, hands dropped to her sides and the tears streaming down her cheeks endlessly. Thomas's heart began to pound uncontrollably in his chest. Roseline watched him as he slipped away to the other side of the bed. Then, grabbing something off the bedside table, he stood back upright, facing her. Thomas clicked the glass case open, fishing out thick spectacles. He wiped the lens carefully with the lens cleaner he had also taken out of the case. Then, balancing the glasses on his face, he began walking towards her, slowly, like she was a prey, and he, the hunter. On reaching where she stood, he grabbed her face in his palms and with his thumbs, wiped off the tears that had lined her cheeks. "Tell me it was a dream. Tell me it was a dream," Roseline stammered, her breathing heavy. Wrapping her hands around his waist, the fine material of his pants smooth against her skin, she stared into his eyes intently. "I want to hear it. Tell me it was all a dream." She spoke again, this time picking her words, one after the other, slowly, carefully. She was really close to him now, with her nipples grazing lightly against his bare chest. His pulse, slowly rising and falling, slowly pressing back on her nipples and releasing them. "Say it," Roseline repeated, moving her hands to his face, her cold palms meeting the hotness beneath his skin. He looked up at her, his eyes strong and his gaze firm, his expression twisted into a mix of desire and uncertainty. But then he spoke, slowly, one word. Pause. Next. It was all a dream. In that instant, Roseline dived her mouth into his. Returning her hands to his waist, she sucked on his tongue like it was her salvation. He obeyed her every silent command, grabbing her hair with one hand and her neck with the other, his glasses creating some sort of friction between their faces. They kissed ferociously for minutes, their bodies against each other like long-distance lovers meeting again for the first time in years, the flame of longing blazing in their hearts. When his mind started to pay attention to the friction around that area of their faces, he had to withdraw to have space to pull the glasses from his face. He had barely done that when her hand slid into his pants and grabbed his cock. It was a sudden pleasure move that his body vibrated in response to. His glasses fell off his hands to the floor and he grabbed her butts, burying her mouth in his. The next thing, she dragged down his pants and pushing him onto the bed, she climbed over him and, together, they maneuvered and explored for the rest of the night. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share while you wait for the part 2.